Hey, you're in the garden with Patrick. Today we're going to talk about tomatoes. We're going to learn how to stake your tomatoes. Mine are getting pretty big now, so it's time to start thinking about staking them. And also we're going to teach you different ways on how you can do that at home. And I'm also going to show you how to start pruning your tomato plants so that they will get you the most fruit throughout the year. All right, so there's no right or wrong way to trellis or to support your tomato plants. What's most important is that you realize the type of tomato plant that you have, indeterminate or determinate. So a determinate tomato plant will grow to a certain height, it'll produce all its fruit, and then it will die. An indeterminate tomato plant will grow pretty much as much as you want it to grow. It will continue to bear fruit for the entire season until the tomato is killed from frost. And in some regions that could be a long growing season. So here we're in zone 8, and we'll have our last freeze sometime in October, maybe, or our first freeze in October or maybe even November. Last year I was harvesting tomatoes since December. So depending on how you're going to stake your tomatoes, use what you have, and then as the season goes on, I'm going to show you how you can also just kind of stop the growth if you don't want them to grow 10, 12, 15 feet high. I'm going to show you a really cool trellising way on how you can take them up and over, and it'll actually work as a little canopy. So let's get started. And again, there's not any right or wrong way of doing this. I love to repurpose things. So as an example, no, this is not my hair, although I could use some of this. But this is an old mop. What do you do with this old mop when you're done with it? Well, you throw it away probably. Well, what you can do is you can take this mop head and take that part off, and then what you're going to do is you're going to have just a stick. So you can use this as a staking. Doesn't cost you anything, and you can use this to stake your tomato plants. You can use a little stick or a piece of wood. Again, depending on how high your variety is going to grow, this is not going to probably be very good for something that's going to grow 10 foot tall. So you're going to want to get a taller stick or some kind of support. They make these green supports stakes also. These are going to be good as far as doing, again, a little bit longer. It's this particular one is probably about 5 feet, but you're going to want to put that and stake that in the ground maybe another 2 or 3 feet. So this isn't going to be very much longer than that mop. So what you want to try to do is think about how tall you're going to be using your tomatoes and what you're going to do with them from there. Now, you can also purchase these cages. Okay, again, the cages are fine for the size depending on what you're going to be using. Now the problem with this again is the cage only goes up to a certain height. The tomato plant is going to continue to grow, the indeterminate ones, and then it's going to flop over and you're going to have issues with that. So one thing that you can do is you could take 2 of these and you can put them on top of each other and use that as a little bit of a longer base. So you can use 2 of these tomato cages and it'll grow vertically that way. But again, it's just entirely up to you. So what I'm going to show you today is I'm going to show you how to trellis your tomato plants straight up in the air, and that's what I did last year and it worked great. And then this year what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them come up and we're going to have them grow a little bit this way vertically or horizontally, so that it actually acts as a little shade for our garden as things grow. So let's show you how I set that up, and then I'll give you all the details. All right, so as you can see here, my tomato plants are growing fairly well. And what's happening now, as they're getting larger, taller, they are starting to flop over a little bit, okay? So what you're gonna try to do is you want those to grow, and I rigged up one here, and I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. Basically, you're gonna take your tomato plant, and you're gonna put a little stake there, and then you're gonna run some type of string or wire or whatever you have. And then I have 2 different wires that I'm going to be using, and I attach those to the side of my house here. And also, here's a special bonus. If you really like to bring in some pollinators, these are the houses for them, and I have some bees that love to just kind of hang out here. So they're the drone bees, the worker bees, and you can see how they're all making their home in there, and they're kind of coming out of their little house there. You can see that, really cool. So I put this up a couple of years ago, and that also helps with the pollinators, so you won't have any issues. So then my second part I put over here and connected it to my neighbor. He approved that, by the way. I just, pay him in tomatoes, that's all. So let's show you how the setup goes. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is you're gonna take your shears, and you always wanna make sure when you use your cutting shears that you always sanitize them. You can sanitize it with alcohol, or maybe something that's gonna kill any bacteria, because you can cross with different things that will cause harm to your garden. So, but the first thing I want you to do is first we're gonna prune our tomato plant, okay? So if you can see in here, and let's actually come a little closer. So if you can see here, this tomato plant is a mess. First thing is, you don't want these leaves to be resting on the ground, because what will happen is those leaves can get diseased from the soil that splashes up, and there's all kinds of different things that you want to stay away from that's on your garden soil that can infect your tomato plants. So I want you to, as they get a little taller, you want to always keep those leaves off. We're going to take those off. And then also, if you can see here, this is a great example of a sucker, okay? So you see here, this right here, this is the main stem of the plant, and then it has a leaf that comes out here, and then this is what we call the armpit. Right in the armpit of that tomato plant is going to be a sucker. So what you're just going to do with that is just take that right off, okay? So I got one there, also have another one right here. So see, here's the main stem, and then you have here the there it is. Then you have the leaf there, and then you have the sucker. So just take those suckers out. You don't want those. That's just stealing a lot of nutrition and energy from the plant, because what you want is you want them to put into there as much as you can, those flowers, okay? So that's what you're shooting for. Now, from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut these leaves on the bottom so that we're allowing airflow, number one. So we're just gonna cut those. And don't be afraid of pruning. So we're just cutting all of those leaves, first of all. So before we do anything, I want to make sure that I can get that tomato plant working a little bit better. Now I missed one here, so we'll just pluck that one off too, okay? So now you have a little bit better idea. You can see here. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to take a stake, and we're going to place that in the ground with a string. All right, so all I'm just doing here is I have some garden twine. Again, you can use whatever you want, something that's going to hold up to the sun, the UV rays. And I'm going to just tie that here on the end of just a stake. Now again, you can use something like this. You can get an actual stake itself. It doesn't really matter. The key is that you're just using something that you can tie down into the ground. And I'm just going to connect that way, okay? So now it's pretty secure. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this stake, and I'm going to place this stake right in the ground near the plant. Okay, so let's get in here so you can see that. All right, so I have the stake here, and we're just going to put that close to the base of the tomato plant. Put that all the way down in the ground. Okay, now all we're just going to do is we're going to take this wire and we're going to run this wire up the tomato plant. So let me show you how to do that. So you just run that this way and around. So it works a lot better when they're smaller plants, but that's pretty much what you're going to do like that. Now, once you have the tomato plant there, okay, we're going to run that all the way up. All right, so what we're doing, we're taking this twine here that we've already wound around our tomato plant. We're going to take this up to the top here of our wire that we have up here. We're going to just make sure that that's nice and tight. And that is it. So I'm going to wrap that once around this way. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to place it on the other one that I have. And then what'll happen is you'll see how once the tomato plant grows up, what'll happen is we'll take it around and over to the other wire, and then that will come down, and as it's up on this top trellis, it will also act as a shade for the rest of the garden as the summer comes along. So now all I'm doing is I'm taking my trellis wire, going to connect that here. And you want to make sure that you have a good knot. And all you're just going to basically do now is just let that kind of grow, and you'll see how that grows over the season. Let's take a look a little closer. So this is the knot, and then you can see how it goes this way. And we're going to do that with the rest of our tomato plants. Now, when you're using one of these sticks or some kind of a pole, maybe it's your mop, but you're going to do the exact same thing. What you're going to do is you're going to kind of stick this right next to your tomato plant. Okay, you're going to go down about maybe 2 foot, again depending on how much you're wanting your tomatoes to grow. And then as the tomato grows higher, you're going to stake and kind of use some twine or wire, and you're going to connect that to your stick here. Okay, so I'm not going to use that method because I'm going to use these strings that we're using here with the trellis system that I made up. And but again, you could do that. You can also use a tomato cage. But again, the tomato cage, you can see how it's almost already outgrowing my tomatoes, the cage that I have here for my peppers. So that's what you're basically going to try to do, is think about the size that you're going to be using, and you don't have to use anything fancy, just use what you got. All right, before I finish trellising my tomatoes, I do want to show you a little bonus here on how you can properly prune your tomato plants. Now, this tomato plant here, it's a mess. I mean, literally a mess. So I'm going to show you, once you get to this stage, you got to make some really hard decisions, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Here is one of my heirloom tomatoes, and as you can see here, we cut the bottom leaves off, took all the suckers out. We got a main stem, one growing from there, and that is it. So we got already some flowers that are starting to fruit, and we want to trim our tomato plant that looks like that. Now you can do what we call a single stem, or you can even do two stems, and that's what I might do in this situation. However, again, if you look down here, you just can't even tell anything of what's going on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start cutting and pruning this tomato plant so that you can see what we want to do is try to make that one stem. Now, so let's start from the very beginning at the bottom. Okay, so at the bottom is right here. Let's see here, get you in here close. Here's the main stem right here. As the main stem comes up, it continues to go here, and then once it gets to this point here, it goes into two. Now, what happened is I wasn't paying as much attention as I should, and what happened in this junction right here is this is one of those little suckers, okay? And the sucker continued to grow, and now we have essentially two main stems. So this is a good example of a sucker. So again, here's your main stem, here's your leaf that comes out here, and then in between is what we call a sucker. So what happened in this situation is here was the sucker. I didn't catch it quick enough, and it's starting to grow, and now it's pretty big. Now I have two decisions I can make. I can just cut that off and we can continue with this main stem here and continue to grow up, or I could do two main stems. You don't want many more than that, because it's just gonna continue to grow, and what it's gonna do is it's gonna grow these suckers very large, and then you're not gonna get as much fruit, okay? So you think, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a lot more flowers and a lot more fruiting, but what this does is it robs your plant from its nutrients, okay? So we're gonna snip this off. So I'm gonna keep two, okay? But let's start here from the bottom. So I'm just gonna start taking off these low leaves, also so we can see this video, but we're gonna take all of these low leaves off so that we can just have one main stem that's growing. So again, you can see from here, now we've done that. Now you see this leaf here, it's kind of growing downwards, and you can also see it's touching the ground. So remember, we want to cut those, anything that's touching the ground, and as they grow higher, we're going to try to keep that away from there. So I'm going to find this one over here. All right, so now we're cleaning this up a little bit more, and that way we can see a little bit better down in the stem here, okay? So now we got the stem, and we got the main stems. There's another little sucker right here, right there. Okay, so we're gonna pull that out, and there's another sucker right here in the armpit, and again, there's another sucker right there. So you're gonna kinda just snip those out, okay? Now I got the two main stems growing. I'm gonna take off this, because again, that one's touching the ground, that leaf, and also this one here. So now we have nothing that's touching the ground except for that. And there's another sucker. Okay, now now you can see a little bit easier the two main stems that we have. So I'm going to grow this one up vertically. I'm going to take this one to the side, and we'll have two main stems for this beautiful tomato plant. So the really cool thing about using this method for trellising is that you do have a little bit of flexibility on how you take your line, your string, and where you put it, and how you want your tomato plants to grow. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you can do. Be creative, work with what you have, and you'll see some really cool things happening here in the next couple of months as these tomato plants grow up. Those beautiful trellises that we just made, and again, goes all the way up. And again, what you can do is you can also move these based on how you want them to grow. So if you want to pull it a little bit more this way, you can certainly do that along that line here. So that's just a quick, easy way on how to trellis your tomatoes. If you liked what I did today, you want to try this at home, put a comment on the comment box and what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be staking your tomatoes this year. And also, please go ahead and like our page and subscribe. Until next time, happy gardening. So here's 2 easy ways to trellis and support your tomato plants. Take that tomato cage, flip it upside down. Now you got good 10-foot trellis for that to go.